And then we have the sagittal, which is, if I remove this, sagittal, just going straight across the head. Well, from like anterior to posterior kind of line. And that houses the parietal, these two bones here. Well, it's one bone, but it goes in between that. And then we have our squamous, which is the side. If you see here, there's a few little ridges here, and that's the squamous, and that makes up the temporal bone and the parietal. And then we have our lambdoid suture, which is, if you look in back of here, there's a suture that goes around here, and that makes up the occipital bone and the parietal bone. We have our parietal and occipital. Okay, let's see. So then now we move on to our facial bones. So we have, our nasal bone right above here. I just need to see the list. Ethmoid bone lies in here in between the orbits. Let's see what else we have. Ethmoid. Zygomatic bone, which is kind of like the cheekbone area. I don't want to move this out of the... we have our maxilla, which makes up the top portion of our mouth. So the maxilla here. And then we have our mandible, which is kind of our jaw. So here's the mandible. And then we have our vomer, which is, I guess would be like in back of the nose, so in here, where our nasal passage is kind of at. And then we have inferior nasal concha, and that's right in here as well. So in there's an inferior nasal concha. Let's see. I think that's it. Oh, and then for the mandible, it has a body, the angle, and the ramus, and so forth. So we have, let's see. Mandible. Mandible ramus. Process. Let's see. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get the list of the mandible. Okay, I think I said these earlier, but I'm not too sure. The mandible, we have the coracoid process, which is going to be up in here. I did say them, I said them too soon. Then we have our condylar process, which is above here, kind of where the jaw attaches to the head. Mandibular notch, which is this groove here. Mandibular ramus, which is on here. And coronoid process, I went through that, and I think that's it. Okay, so now we can move on to the vertebral column. And so for the vertebral column, our primary are the thoracic and the sacral. So we have our cervical, which is going to consist of 7 vertebrae. We have our thoracic, which consists of 12. And then we have the sacral, which consists of 5 bones. And so our secondary would be our lumbar and cervical. The lumbar curvature and the cervical. So lumbar and cervical are secondary. Primary are thoracic and sacral, so right below here. Let's see. Process. So our spinous processes are these, the vertebral, there's little bones that kind of stick out, and if you touch your back, you may be able to feel them. That's what you feel. Our C7 is the one that sticks out the most, so if you bend your neck over, you'll feel that spinal process there. Transverse processes are, it doesn't move. So our transverse processes are these here. So we have our spinous and our transverse, which lie, they're just kind of side to side, parallel to our joints, our ribs, I'm sorry. Spinous process. Intervertebral discs, of course, are going to be the discs that are in between. Oh, that's so weird, it doesn't. Are discs that are in between each vertebrae. Intervertebral foramen, if we were to look here, there's holes in between each one, and the intervertebral foramen lies in there. And I believe that's it. Okay. So again, our thoracic vertebrae has 12. Our cervical has 7. And our lumbar has 5. The sacral, there are 5 fused vertebrae. So the vertebrae are fused together with them. And our coccyx is 4 fused vertebrae. And let's see. Okay. So of course we have our sacrum here. This is our sacrum. And then our coccyx is the very final bone there. And I believe now we get to move on to the sternum. Yes. So we have our sternum. We have here our manubrium. Our jugular notch is right above here. Let's see. The body of our sternum is this longer portion here. Xiphoid process is going to be the very last pick here. I hope that you can see. So you can sometimes feel your the xiphoid process on yourself. Let's see. So now we have true ribs, which contain 1 through 7. So starting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we have our false ribs. One starts here. And then we have our false ribs, and that's 8 to 12. So it ends here. And then of course we have our floating ribs, which are 11 and 12. They're not connected to the sternum. Let's see. Okay, so now I'm going to point out the head, the neck, and the tubercle of a rib and explain how ribs articulate with the vertebrae. So they articulate with the vertebrae, one being that it joins the body of the same numbered thoracic vertebra, and the other articulates with the body of the vertebra immediately superior. So we have the head of the rib, which is going to be the closest basically the closest to your vertebrae. Now we have the neck of the rib, and that's going to be kind of where it curves. So maybe about here. That's the neck of the rib. And then we have the tubercle of the rib, and that also, it's so hard with this, but that's also kind of where it curves. And I believe that's it. Yes, and I think I hopefully covered everything and that I didn't miss anything. Thank you so much.